Set in the tumultuous 17th century of Lithuania during an era marked by plague and societal unrest, the Golem delves into themes of grief, vengeance, and the peril of harnessing incomprehensible supernatural powers. The narrative unfolds within a secluded Jewish community where Hannah, a strong-minded and insightful woman, challenges the confines of gender roles by clandestinely exploring Kabbalistic texts that are traditionally off-limits to women. Haunted by the unresolved grief of her young son Joseph's death, Hannah struggles to cope with her sorrow, finding little comfort in her husband Benjamin or the surrounding villagers, which sets her apart both in faith and intellect. Her tranquil existence is shattered when a group of Gentiles from a neighboring village, desperate amidst the plague and seeking someone to blame, confront the Jewish community. Their leader Vladimir embodies violence and unpredictability, exacerbating tensions as he demands assistance which the Jewish elders can only offer in sympathy, escalating fears among the villagers. Feeling the mounting threat to her community, Hannah resolves to utilize the mystical knowledge she has secretly embraced. She decides to engage in a forbidden ritual aimed at creating a golem, a clay figure animated by means of Kabbalistic magic intended as a protector for her people. In the solitude of the woods, Hannah gathers clay and performs the sacred rites, successfully bringing the golem to life. To her astonishment, this being resembles her deceased son, manifesting as a young boy rather than the fearsome giant she anticipated. Initially, this childlike golem, obedient and taciturn, draws close to Hannah, hidden from the rest of the village as she conceals his true nature. However, the seeming innocence of the golem belies its dark potential. As the Gentile aggressors escalate their hostility towards the Jews, resorting to intimidation and outright violence, the golem's response turns vicious. Utilizing his formidable telekinetic abilities, he retaliates with a brutal vengeance, slaying the attackers with horrifying effectiveness. A particularly shocking sequence shows a group of assailants obliterated in the woods, their bodies left in a gruesome state. While the villagers experience both a sense of relief and terror at the violent turn of events, they remain oblivious to the darker source of their newfound protector, highlighting the profound complexities of grief and the consequences of attempting to control forces beyond human understanding. As the golem's violent tendencies escalate, Hannah grapples with a profound moral conflict. The creature filling the void left by her deceased son becomes an object of her maternal affection, juxtaposed with the horror of his escalating actions. Lacking an understanding of right and wrong, the golem responds to Hannah's emotional distress by eliminating those he perceives as threats, acting out of a misguided sense of loyalty to her. Amidst the chaos, Benjamin, who is growing increasingly suspicious of her actions, begins to unravel the grim reality surrounding the golem. Tensions within the community heighten as more individuals fall victim to mysterious and horrifying incidents. Upon discovering the truth about the creature, Benjamin warns Hannah of its uncontrollable nature, expressing his concern over her belief that she can manage such a creation. Yet, blinded by her grief and driven by a warped sense of righteousness, Hannah remains resolute in her conviction. The anger of the Gentiles intensifies, blaming the Jewish community for their plight, and they return for a final violent assault on the village. During the ensuing conflict, the golem intervenes, unleashing its fury and decimating the attackers. However, as the battle unfolds, it becomes evident that the golem's bloodlust now extends beyond intentions, and even innocents are caught in the crossfire. Hannah comes to a heartbreaking realization: the golem is not the rebirth of her son, but rather a destructive force born from her anguish and desire for revenge. In the climax of the narrative, Hannah must confront the consequences of her actions. The village, now in terror, recognizes the golem as a threat to its own people, not just the outsiders. Understanding that her emotional bond with the creature fuels its power and drives its protective instincts, Hannah ultimately decides to make the most profound sacrifice. In a moment of painful clarity, she offers her own life in order to put an end to the golem's reign of terror. Her sacrifice leads to the creature's dissolution into dust, freeing it from the earthly realm. The film concludes in silence, portraying a village that, while saved, bears deep scars from the events that transpired. The survivors, haunted by loss and guilt, bury their dead, and life cautiously resumes. Hannah's choices, though aimed at protecting her people, invoke a cycle of suffering intertwined with salvation. The golem delves into intricate themes of Jewish mysticism, grief, gender dynamics, and the repercussions of violence, reflecting on the nature of creation, both physical and metaphorical. The golem stands as a symbol of Hannah's unresolved trauma and her struggle for agency in a patriarchal society. In the golem, the creature, resembling a child, epitomizes how suffering can twist love into something destructive. Hannah sees her deceased son in the golem, thus endowing it with power that extends not only over others but also over her own will, as it embodies her repressed anger and grief. Unlike a living child, the golem lacks the capacity for growth and development. Instead, it operates with cold, mechanical precision, intensifying her emotions into chaos and devastation. The narrative carries a significant feminist theme, portraying Hannah's defiance against the societal expectations imposed by her faith and community. By assuming roles traditionally denied to her, her rebellion becomes a source of empowerment while also leading to catastrophic consequences. Hannah's quest for knowledge, strength, and justice spirals into the release of uncontrollable forces, reflecting the narrative's cautionary stance on hubris, unbridled grief, and the perils of transgressing sacred norms. The horror depicted in the film is twofold, involving both supernatural elements and deeply human dilemmas. The golem's actions result in grotesque murders, yet the true horror stems from the moral ambiguity surrounding these acts. The film prompts critical reflection on whether Hannah was justified in creating the golem and whether the lives it claimed were worth sacrificing for the village's defense. These unsettling questions linger in the viewer's mind, compelling them to confront the moral implications of her actions. The Golem is an evocative film that successfully marries folklore with emotional depth, situating the ancient legend within a historical backdrop that resonates with fundamental human experiences such as loss, fear, and the urge to protect loved ones. As a protagonist, Hannah emerges as a tragic figure, a blend of hero and transgressor, navigating a path of sacrifice, personal transformation, and poignant redemption. Through its subtle horror and philosophical richness, the film delivers a contemporary and insightful perspective on one of the oldest tales in Jewish mythology. Set against the misty backdrop of a 17th-century Jewish state in Lithuania, the story opens with villagers pursuing a man accused of engaging in forbidden Kabbalistic practices. They ultimately execute him, illustrating the violent intersection of faith, mysticism, and fear of the unknown. Within this climate, Hannah, an educated and independent woman, lives with her husband Benjamin. Despite the expectation to conform to traditional roles, she clandestinely studies sacred texts, including the Kabbalah, disciplines typically barred to women. Haunted by the loss of their son Joseph, who drowned years prior, Hannah's internal struggle is intricately woven into the fabric of her character and the narrative's overarching themes. Torn between his lifeless origins and his newfound existence. As Hannah nurtures him, she struggles with the ethical implications of her creation. Her love for the Golem grows, but she is constantly aware of the precariousness of their situation. If the truth were to be revealed, both the Golem and her family could face severe consequences at the hands of the restless Gentiles. Meanwhile, tensions in the Gentile village escalate. As the plague continues to ravage their community, the Gentiles' desperation turns to fury and violence. They ramp up their accusations against the Jews, blaming them for their suffering. Fearful of an attack, the Jewish villagers find themselves on high alert, forced to defend their way of life. As Vladimir and his group prepare for a confrontation, Hannah realizes she must find a way to protect her people and her Golem. Hannah begins to rely on the Golem for protection, instructing him to shield the village and defend against any threats. The Golem, eager to please, begins to demonstrate remarkable strength and agility, terrifying the Gentiles during altercations and saving the Jewish villagers from brutal attacks. Yet while Hannah is grateful for the Golem's abilities, she fears the loss of control over what she has created. As the Golem starts to embrace his role as protector, his inherent innocence becomes overshadowed by the violence surrounding them. As conflicts escalate, Hannah faces an agonizing choice. She must either accept the possibility of the Golem turning against her if provoked, or reveal his existence and risk exposing her dangerous secret. The stakes are raised when the Gentiles launch a full-scale attack on the Jewish village, with Vladimir leading the charge. In the heat of battle, the Golem defends Hannah and the villagers with unwavering loyalty, showcasing both his newfound strength and tragic vulnerability. Caught in the turmoil of loyalty, fear, and the potential for chaos, Hannah fights to maintain control over the Golem while keeping her community safe from the wrath of the Gentiles. The complexity of their relationship deepens as she grapples with the ramifications of her actions, prompting her to reflect on her place within the community and the unnatural bond she shares with the creature she brought to life. Ultimately, as the confrontation reaches its climax, Hannah must confront the reality of her choices and the fragility of both life and existence within a world filled with suspicion and hatred. The events set into motion a chain reaction that will reveal the true cost of her desperation and the ethical boundaries crossed in her quest for redemption and protection. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.